because
Yep.
we're going. Good morning. It's great to see you at the intersection this morning. You know, we're just crossing streets and seeing people we haven't seen for a while. And I see some new people on the screen that I've not met yet. But I want to get into our conversation for today, our info for the day as quickly as we can, while still giving people a few moments. There are two press releases that I want to share with you. And here's one. And I don't know about you, but when there's a press release, that tells me that people want lots of people to know, right? It's important. So we all know about the earthquakes. Can you all see the screen? Great. So tonight at 6:30 here's the address of Raindrop, 4337 Vance Jackson. There's going to be community prayer for those victims of the earthquake. So I'm going to leave that on the screen. You know, they have given information. I don't know if anybody knows what the current count is.
17,000.
Oh, please.
I have a question. I think Mehmet is here. Mehmet, do you want people to register or can we just share the address?
You can just share the address.
Our prayers are with you, Mehmet.
Yes.
This
And
is
I did send this out yesterday with the notification. And so if you want the actual flyer or be able to forward it in an email, in yesterday's notification, it was there. Okay. So I think what we'll do right now is take a moment, a fairly, you know, healthy moment in silence to remember all those 17,000 and their families and their friends and our brothers and sisters there. So if we could take a minute. Thank you. The other press release that I want to show you, so is going out tomorrow. And this is for our event next Tuesday on domestic violence prevention via the faith community. Something interesting that I have never seen before. I've been managing the Eventbrite for the event. And we currently have 51 registrations. We need to probably make that like 150, but this is what I've never seen before. So we have 51 registrations, but we have had 551 views of this invitation. I have never seen the numbers 10 times larger than the registration to come and look at it. I don't know what that tells us, but I think it tells us something. Generally, the Eventbrites I do, the numbers of views are about double, maybe a little bit more than double, but never have I seen 5 times larger. So this is the press release for next Tuesday and what we're going to be exploring today. But you can also then see the lineup of who we're going to be hearing from. And some amazing people are coming and spending time with us. sharing services and resources of how we can connect. The chief of police is coming. And that's kind of what today is about, more than encouraging you to attend. In fact, I'm gonna invite us at 8:05 to learn together today. So if you don't already have an old school pen in your hand and a piece of paper, I invite you to do that. And with that, so I'm going to be asking some things along the way today. So we're each taking time to think and reflect. So on that piece of paper, which you won't be sharing with anybody else but yourself, if you could take just a second, if you have registered for Tuesday, why you registered, and that could be one word that you write down. Why did you register? If you have not registered for Tuesday, why haven't you registered? The real reason, whatever that is. I mean, you may have a commitment that you cannot break. I get that. Right? So every once in a while, I'm going to ask a question, again, a self-reflection question, not mine. I mean, it's for you, right? So I'm going to turn this over to our domestic violence prevention via faith community collaborative. You know, we come up with really catchy names for our collaboratives, but you do know what they are, right? When you hear them. So I don't know who's facilitating the lead on this, but I'm handing it over to Karen, Sammy, Lisa, whoever's in charge of it. It's all yours.
Well, welcome everyone. What we thought we would do is we have invited 4 of panelists this morning that are deeply involved in this particular collaborative. And the first question I have for them is, why did you join this particular collaborative? And I will let any of the 4 of you kind of decide who wants to go first, and then if you could, pass it off to someone else.
I will go first, Karen. Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Can you guys
And
hear
you
me?
might introduce yourself, Sammy, quickly.
I will. I just want to make sure everyone can hear me.
Yep.
Okay. I am the co-facilitator on the Domestic Violence Prevention Collaborative. I am a retiree from HEB. Very proud of that fact, that I don't have to get up and go do a job every day. But really excited about this collaborative. I'm also an ordained elder within the faith community, non-denominational faith community, and really got concerned about this and found out about the collaborative and wanted to be a part of it. And my reasoning for wanting to be a part of it is to become more aware of the tools and the resources available to address this devastating issue within the faith community and within the community at large. And secondly, to share those tools with my colleagues and those who are being affected by this behavior in the hope of creating and bringing lasting change to stop the cycle. And it is indeed a cycle, the cycle of abuse within our communities, be they faith communities or just communities at large. And so that was why I got involved, especially as a man, because I don't see many men being involved in this effort. And I know men are perceived to be, and maybe are actually, the primary perpetrators of this behavior. And so I wanted to lend my voice. I wanted to be a face within the community, specifically the faith community, that said, hey, we can make a difference and we can do some things differently to stem the tide of physical abuse, emotionally abuse, whatever type of abuse that is going on within our faith communities and within our communities at large. So that being said, I would really encourage you to, if you are available, to attend next on the 14th Valentine's Day, that specific day, and be a part of that conversation, be a part of that dialogue. And I would ask that you would come with a purpose in mind of taking what you receive, a nugget, something that you can take back to your faith community and put back into practice so as to effect change, so as to create the thing that and I won't be much longer, Karen, but the thing that I have really noticed over my years of being in the faith community, leading faith groups is this. This is one of those subjects that don't get a lot of press. This is one of those subjects, along with mental health, that we don't talk about a lot in the context of the pulpit to the congregations that we have leadership over and oversight over. Why that is, I don't know. Reverend Ann, you said something up front. You know, we have 551 views, but we only have 51 registration. Within my own sphere of influence, I've sent this invite out, and it's amazing to me. The response almost parallels what you're talking about. And the elephant in the room is why? Why don't we want to get involved? Why won't we step up and say, you know, hey, this is wrong, and there's a way to effectively address it so as to stop the cycle? And I get off my soapbox and pass it on to the next member of our collaborative.
Well, I do want to comment. One, I want to thank you, Sammy, for stepping up when you did and for as long as you have. And I know you're not going away. So I want to thank you for that. But I think you've raised an important reflection question for those old school pens. Why, this question is for everybody, why don't you think there's more engagement in this particular area? I know we can't do all things, but I think we would agree that this is an important one. I will tell you, I sent out to the entire network of the faith-based initiative. Normally, there are like 30% that go ahead and click through to more information. This time it was almost 75%. That's like unheard of. So what I posted on that, again, people wanted to go see it. So there's this, I'm sensing a huge like concern, curiosity. I don't know what that is, but then what happens? Why doesn't the next step happen? So I invite you to write in your reflection, why do you think there isn't more engagement within the faith community in this direction? So hand it back to the collaborative.
So I'll go next.
Thanks, Lisa.
So in Judaism, we have an oral tradition in addition to the Torah, the written tradition. And one of my just most inspirational quotes from that is, "You're not obligated to complete the work, but neither are you free to desist from it." And I think that with domestic violence, it seems so overwhelming. I mean, at least for me, I tread into this work about 6 years ago and started learning about it. And I just became overwhelmed by all that was going on behind closed doors and all that needed to be done, because there's no easy fix. I mean, if you knew that cigarettes were killing your congregation, you know, you might find steps to take to get people to stop smoking. But, you know, what are the steps to take to stop domestic violence? And believe me, it is happening in your congregation. It absolutely is. There's no way possible, given the statistics, that this is not happening to people sitting in your congregation. So I just go by that quote that, like, you have to start somewhere. You have to do one thing. You have to learn, you know, what are the resources and what is the one change I can make to start helping people. I'm not saying we're going to fix it, but we need to start. We need to begin. And so that is why I have been working in this collaborative. And I hope that if you can't come, you can find someone in your congregation or a friend or, you know, somebody else and designate them. You need to go and report back to us about what you find out.
And I want to follow up on that, just to give an image to what Lisa's talking about. And I really appreciate the first piece of wisdom from within the Jewish tradition, right? Can't do all things, but that doesn't mean you're free to do nothing, right? Imagine for a moment, say, when you're gathered in prayer or worship, all the people who gather with you, or imagine for a minute, all the people that you work with, you know, like in your organization, or so imagine that group of people. Now separate the men and the women. And in the women group, take out 1/3. So try to mentally start like doing that. And then out of the men, take 1/7 and add those to the 1/3. Now, all of their children, all of their offspring, add to that 1/3 and 1/7. Now you have, in the people of which you gather in worship and prayer, or at your work, that's how many people are impacted by domestic violence in one form or another. So the next question I'm going to put onto that reflection, if it is not you personally, who this is, you know, your particular passion, I bet that you know someone or several someones that it is. Who is it that you know in your congregation or your organization that this particular community concern is important to them? And if it's more than one name, write them all down. So on your old school piece of paper, write down those names, please. Who's next to tell their story why?
Naomi?
Good morning. My name is Naomi. I am outreach minister at Metropolitan Community Church, and I'm also the director of clinical services at the Pride Center. And I'll tell a story because I think stories teach us. I was associate pastor at a non-denominational church in San Antonio, and the pastor had a wife who was very touched by God, his word. And because of her touch by God, she needed to be set aside from the rest of the congregation. She needed to be allowed to commune with God on a higher level. And we went to this church for about 2 years. And we had left the church and I went on to a different church that I was serving at. And I got a call asking me from a lawyer, asking me to sign some paperwork. And the paperwork had to do with her children. So she was in the hospital, she was having a very serious surgery, and she wanted me to take her children home to Oklahoma if something happened to her. So my confusion was, well, this is the pastor's wife. They're still married. Why is she asking me to do this? So I show up at the hospital. And when I show up at the hospital, she began to tell me a story. And the story she told me was a story of isolation. It was a story of verbal and emotional abuse. And it was a story that a man of God hid behind God to perpetrate on her. And I'm a therapist. I do this for a living. I'm a minister. I walk in these spaces and I didn't see it. I didn't see it. And from that moment on, I decided I would never not look. I would never not look. So I represent the queer community, and domestic violence can be very different in our community. But I never close my eyes. So that's the reason I show up in Europe. is because the one time I closed my eyes, a woman was encrusted.
Thank you, Naomi. So, reflection question. Are my eyes open or are they closed? Can I see or can I not see? And what would I need to learn in order to see? So that's my plug again for next Tuesday, because part of what is going to be shared on Tuesday is what needs to be seen and how to look. But I invite you, can be difficult to look at these reflection questions because they're about ourselves and the role we play in it. And if we're playing no role, then we're also complicit. So those are hard questions. So next, who's next from the collaborative?
We have Patricia. Patty? Is she here?
I'm scrolling to look. I don't see her on the list. It might have crashed or something.
Okay.
That happens.
Yep. I'm going to change my view here so I have gallery if she comes back in. Okay, so let's keep an eye out for Patricia Castillo because she's got decades of experience in this field. And we definitely want to hear her voice. So I'll pitch hit for the moment. What brings me to this particular work, and Sammy and I are the co-chairs for this particular collaborative. I also want to echo Ann's thank you, Sammy, for stepping forward into that role. Is I've always had a concern for violence and what makes a person engage in violence or decide not to engage in violence. And I came to domestic violence or concern for domestic violence, not because I grew up in it, but because in the faith tradition that I grew up, the center of the universe, so to speak, was your faith home. And there's been some bad theology that I think allows for this particular behavior, which Naomi has pointed out is often hidden because those that are on the receiving end of abuse are embarrassed and they don't want to share what's going on. They've internalized that somehow they're to blame, which is ludicrous. It's not true. And then those that engage in the behavior find some type of justification for the behavior. And again, we've got a whole bunch of bad theology there in terms of some violence being construed as redemptive. It's not. I joined this collaborative because I want to get at some of that bad architecture that's framing conversations about domestic violence, as well as a broader sense of violence. Is Patty been able to join us or not?
Well, just keep watching for her. So I want to go back to that reflection question, old school pencil there. Two questions. Has your own life in some form or fashion and if you write that on your reflection sheet. And is there some theology that is afoot in your tradition that you see or feel or hear damaging? So there's a question mark there. Or that you see is helpful and healing? So that's a three-part question. Have you been impacted? And the theology within your tradition, if you have one? Is there some that's damaging, and can you maybe name that somehow? Or is there some theology that's also healing and helpful? So it's 8:25. I still do not see Patty. If anybody has her, and I'm going to look if they have her phone number. But while we're going to give her a couple more seconds, because we're getting closer to the half hour. So we're just going to pause and wait for Patty, right? Next week, we are going to be hearing from communities of welcome, immigration, refugees. It's something that we started here and we've done in the past, but we've really done, really well this past year and a half of having places of faith and worship, prayer, come around somebody who's becoming a new San Antonian, a refugee, come around them and become their friends and their neighbors and their families. Much like any of us, we might be moving somewhere, and how important it is when we find somebody who helps us really make that move in community. And just recently, our federal government came out with the Welcome Corps, they're calling it, this new idea across the country. Well, that new idea was already happening here a year and a half ago. So once again, we're ahead of the stream, and I invite you to come back next week to hear about communities of welcome. I'm also this morning, I hate to even say this, but I'm going to have to leave pretty tight. I have a meeting that starts at 8:30 that I really need to be at, but I already told them I was going to be a few minutes late. But does anybody, but I'm going to ask Karen to continue whatever conversation there is. Okay, I'm going to see if I have Patty.
Sammy?
I do. Yes.
If we have Patty, let's hear from her. I can wait.
Okay. I have her phone number.
Okay.
I may just call
The
her.
other thing I would say is, do you know anything about getting protective orders? Do you know about shelters? Do you know what to say to someone when they say they've been abused? Are you going to say to them, why don't you leave? Why don't you just leave him? Because that's not what you're supposed to say. Did you know that? We're going to have lots of resources there from the community, tables with experts and people who deal with this every day, who know how to help somebody through the system, the legal system, who know how to help people emotionally, who know how to help us identify, recognize, and walk with somebody through this trauma. So like I said, just open yourself up to learning about this issue, and then you're going to be able to walk away with a couple of things that you can do. I promise you're going to be inspired. Changes you can make, actions you can take, even just putting cards in your women's bathrooms that somebody can pick up a card and put it hide it in their purse and call for help later without telling anybody. So small and big things you can do. So I hope that you'll inspire others to come.
Yes, thank you, Lisa. And Sammy, if I could, I just want to also make another plea before I let you have the last word. And that is, I'm thinking of the African concept of Ubuntu, and that, we're all interconnected. We're all connected to that seamless garment. So I am because we are. So invite us on Valentine's Day to become a we are that never closes their eye to violence that they see around them, that they become informed, as Sammy has done, that they practice and get involved, as Sammy has done, and that we, as Lisa brought up from the Jewish tradition, and I'm going to break up the word, we have the responsibility to participate in the work. And if we become informed, if we keep our eyes open, if we get resourced, just like Lisa was laying out all those resources, then we have the ability to respond, that responsibility. We may not solve this, but we can get engaged and make movement here. Sammy? Sammy, you have to unmute your computer.
I got so excited after hearing you, I forgot to unmute my computer. But I wanted to respond to a quote that is directly behind Lisa's left shoulder that she has there. And I think that encapsulates what we're talking about. It says, there's time always to do what is right. But that doesn't mean it won't be a challenge. That doesn't mean that it will be easy. That doesn't mean that we may have to reevaluate our own paradigm. That doesn't mean that we don't have to look in the mirror and say, do I like what I see? Knowing what I know about this issue, have I done that which is required of me to effectively address this issue? Do I like what I see? Do I like the man in the mirror? And if I don't like that, what can I do? Well, I'm asking you, each of you, to give due consideration to coming and being a part of this conversation. I believe we're going to learn some things together collectively that will empower us collectively as well as individuals to go back and to begin to effect change wherever we find ourselves in those places that we have influence. And so if you are available or a representative of yours is available, please join this conversation, not just for the sake of gaining more insight or knowledge or understanding, but for the purpose of being empowered to go and effect change. Those will be my words to this group.
So I'm signing off, and I'm going to leave this conversation in the hands of the collaborative. I'd put some questions into chat, and I've tried to reach Patty, and I'm guessing something has come up because she's not responding to text or phone. So I invite conversation now. And if anybody's really courageous, maybe to share something that they've learned about themselves in their reflections, if you can be that brave and courageous, which is an action of the heart. Thank you all. I hope to see you next Tuesday.
Thank you, Anne.
Thank you very much.
I also saw in chat that Pastor Barber is here. Pastor, did you want to make some comment? I know you're going to be one of our speakers on Valentine's Day. So I certainly don't want you to share your whole story because you're going to be doing that on Valentine's Day. But if there's something that you feel called to share now.
Well, I wanted to comment on the fact point of why I joined this collaborative. Mainly, I joined this collaborative because of a challenge that I received basically through Sammy when I happened to be on the intersection, and this was brought up that no one from clergy was involved. in this type of situation. And it bothered me because of the fact that it's something that from the pulpit I see or I recognize, and I kind of had to really address that and look at that. And so I became interested in that from that point there, because it's hard not to be looking out at a congregation and not be able to recognize and understand that there's a lot of things that are going on in families that is not made public, but you can see, signs. You can see signs of substance abuse. You can see signs of financial stress. You can see signs of all these things, but it's not being brought out publicly for either the fear of shame or the fear of reprisal or whatever. So how you get around that and address that from a sermonic part is kind of hard. Then I think about the fear of being inadequate, how to handle that situation, because you look at, once you open up that door, it's a lot of things that may come in behind that. And I just put in the chat box that it's not that simple. I've had, people say, well, just leave him. And then the person leaves the spouse, and then goes back. And then that person ends up being labeled as a home wrecker. And now everybody's looking at them for meddling in the person's family business type of thing. So I've seen it work on both ways. And in my culture, I don't know about anybody else, but I was raised that what happens in my house stays in the house. So you don't expose what goes on in the house. I don't care if dad's a drunk or somebody's a cross dresser or someone, whatever goes on in the house, we don't put it out publicly. It's handled inside the house. So growing up with that as from a child and things, it's kind of hard for someone to say, oh, this is my dad is jumped on my mom or whatever, publicly, until the scars of it becomes evident. And then someone says, what's happened, or a group. So I'm just here, George, just because I feel that as clergy, I had to throw my hat in the ring to know that it's not that we don't want to be involved. It's just that we may feel ill-equipped to handle that situation, or we look at it as whereas, hey, how do I go about that? I preach from the pulpit. Now, once I preach from the pulpit, what do I do? Where does that go from there? I'll speak more on that on Tuesday, but that's the only reason I'm involved in this is because of the challenge that Sammy put out, and I happen to be in it. And I say, well, wait a minute, hold on a minute, I'm concerned about that from clergy part, and I'm also concerned in the fact that when it said that clergy is not really involved or concerned about that, because we are concerned, we may feel ill-equipped to handle the repercussions, because it's good to say, hey, leave your husband, but if you don't know where to send them or how to deal with that, you're doing harm. Now you just put something out there and you're not really causing a solution. You're creating a bigger problem. So sometimes that's fear, and even knowing what to do with that subject, other than preaching.
Thank you, Pastor Barber, for being vulnerable and sharing some of your frustrations in terms of providing a compassionate and loving response. Sammy, you would help me on this?
I think we're at a good place, Karen. Again, we've opened the door for those who wanted to share anything that they wanted to share. The real thing now is that I hope that what we have said here today and what has been echoed would really prompt folks to come out and be a part of the conversation. And that's where I would leave it at this point. You know, you all are invited. Well, we need you. We need to hear your voice. We need to hear your insight. There are going to be resources. I mean, plenty resources there. Bridges to Care, Sacred. I mean, just a plethora of resources, so that if that's one of the issues, I don't know what to say. I don't know how to do and how to address. We're going to fix that for you, because all of those resources will be available in the form of written as well as actual representatives of those different organizations, so you can sit and have conversations and get that insight that you need, and maybe even leave there empowered to a degree that you were not before you came. And so appreciate your being available, listening to the conversation, and just looking forward to meeting you in person on Valentine's Day. Much love to all of you. Okay.
Great.
Okay. Bye-bye.